Yeah. Wha- Yep, I think we're good now, buddy. What's up, everybody? Welcome to ITG Daily, the show that brings you the hottest in gaming news. Scott, you and I were talking off screen about Zelda. Oh man,
I'll never be able to get away from it.
That's just like, no, we're good to go. Let's go. Man, yeah, that's the topic for another time. Either way, this is ITG Daily, the show that brings you the hottest in gaming news. I'm Drew Bosa. You can find me on Twitter at ArtisticGamer28. That's the one, the only Scott Savage. You can find him on Twitter at Savage. Scott, you ready for today's loaded Ubisoft episode again? Twice in 1 week, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ubisoft in the news all over again. I hope it's for good reasons this time. Let's hope.
We got a couple things to talk about. What's going on in the world of Ubisoft? Well, Ubisoft placed a call loaded yesterday, full of updates with Rainbow Six, Assassin's Creed Beyond Good and Evil 2, and Skull and Bones.
Oh, there's two heavy hitters right there.
Oh man, well, 2 are out and 2 won't be out for a while. So let's get into what's going on.
No.
But you can always join us live over on twitch.tv/the official ITG, just like Northern Nerdcast and ITG Parker are right now, as well as YouTube. But you can't hit us up live, hit us up later inside the game.ca, podcast services, the TV stream, and networks around the globe. Morning, ITG Parker. What's happening, buddy? Northern Nerdcast, nice to see you too. Cleaning, found crap on that walkthrough, guys. Yeah, we don't want to talk about it. Dude, we're talking about Zelda because we have a couple reviews coming up from Zelda, so keep an eye on that. But the reason why you're talking about it because I'm not the biggest Zelda fan, Scott, as I was just mentioning to you. And over the past few years, realized that Zelda was Zelda and not Link, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, Zelda is not the green tights wearing character.
Yeah, that's someone who's not a Zelda fan understanding a couple years ago that, oh, this is how it works over in this world. But
it's really just the nomenclature of the games. They should be called The Legend of Link.
Well, that's absolutely, it would make a heck of a lot more sense, man. I tell you. But either way, buddy, let's get into things. Yesterday, Ubisoft's financial call brings in some game updates. Let's get going. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Siege crossed 75 million players per Ubisoft's conference call accompanying its Q1 2021-2022 financial results. Ubisoft previously reported that the ongoing squad-based shooter crossed 70 million players back in early February. New operators are still being added and support is continuing with crossplay added to the game on June 30th, which is cool to see. I've yet to really hook up with anybody for that, except for Stadia, Scott, believe it or not. So I have Siege on Stadia, and it automatically jumps you to cross-play. I haven't gone in to take a look if I can turn it off. But dude, I was in there with PC. I'm in there with whoever can jump in, and you with the Stadia controller get absolutely destroyed by a PC player.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate trend that we see in a lot of these crossplay scenarios.
Man.
I think Predator was the one that just absolutely smacked us around. But I'm really curious to see if I can play on Steam to Xbox. That's what I want to see. But
Yeah.
I would not like to experience that on the Xbox side.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, it is, Nate. Siege is crossplay, but it is crossplay. We're looking for it. They're looking to bring it to Xbox, PlayStation, and PC. But again, it comes back to the fact that you should just leave PC to themselves because you know what, master race it is. It's just the turnaround time, man. Like you can tell when you're watching somebody on mouse and keyboard versus a controller because they can flip on a dime. Where a controller, it's just, if you watch a controller, it feels like you're going so slow compared to mouse and keyboard, where it's just like 180 on a dime and like no time at all.
I used to doubt the master race aspect of PC gaming, but that was until I saw people, on PC, you can, it's almost like you're just throwing shots over your shoulder. But like it's that fast. You can just spin around and continue forward momentum. It's on another playing field.
It truly is, right? So I think if we can go cross-play between Xbox and PlayStation, that's good. But it's just nice to see that Siege, one of my favorite games, is still climbing. 75 million players. New operators are still in the works. We already knew that. Their overall goal is to reach 100 operators by the time they're done. Maybe then we'll get Siege 2. Who knows? But I wouldn't mind a new map. And if they could just do me a favor, please, Ubisoft, just bring me out back. I want it back into the rotation. I love that map. It is now
I'd
gone.
forgotten all about it,
Dude, the map is gone. It is not in ranked at all. It's just disappeared, which is unfortunate. They had other news to talk about, though, Scott. On the conference call, Ubisoft noted that it intends to launch new Assassin's Creed content every year. Here we go again. This doesn't mean a full new game, but instead can refer to new story expansions for existing games, such as Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which will see expansions in 2022.
Well, okay, of course there's going to be an emphasis on Valhalla, but
Of course.
will they roll it back even further? Are we going to get expansions for older titles in the series? Because that's something that would bring me back into those. You know, if there was more to Brotherhood, for example.
Okay, so that was my question too, right? I think you raised a good question here, Scott. Is how far are they going to roll back? I honestly think they're just going to continue with Valhalla. I don't think we're going to go all the way back to Brotherhood. We could roll back as far as Odyssey and Origins because they are on last gen versus heading back to like PS3 and Xbox 360 days. So yeah, but year
there's an HD remake coming down the pipe that we're not aware of yet. They come out with a Brotherhood 2.
Oh man, I would love to see something like next gen, but to bounce back into Ezio's story. Ezio is one of my favorite characters of all time. I thought the whole storyline was fantastic and always caught me, man. I couldn't wait to jump back in, and it was really good. Ubisoft also reiterated that Assassin's Creed Infinity is still in early development. Sources currently indicate that the game is being aimed for a 2024 release window. Thoughts on that one, Scott?
Oh, that's quite a while out, but they're hoping this will be the venue that they express more updates through. I'm sure that's what they mean by yearly updates to this property. Infinity is kind of the
games of service, right?
Yeah, that's the one that's going to pump a lot of this content. So I suppose it does make sense. They're going to take a little while to set that up because they have to future-proof it.
Yep. No, yeah, there's a lot to fall down the line for Assassin's Creed. My biggest fear is, though, when we got into Ezio's story, dude, it was just Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed, Assassin's Creed. Everybody just got on the Assassin's Creed fatigue train and fell off the game, a lot of it, right? To the point where a lot of people didn't even play Syndicate. Dude, Syndicate was fantastic. That game was wicked.
That was the one that brought me back in, actually. It was, Unity was cool, but I didn't get to play that multiplayer. Yeah, which is a shame because that's the whole thing was created around it, right? But
yeah, for sure.
Syndicate is one that I picked up, I played, and I couldn't put down, and it gave me that same feeling that 2 Revelations, Brotherhood, that kind of stuff. It hit me in the same spot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm curious to see what happens here. I'm not surprised that it's 2024. I could see it honestly rolling into 25. I don't think it's going to be here anytime soon. I think we're years away. But the problem being is keeping the mentality of everybody involved around Assassin's Creed. We've seen huge launches with Odyssey and Valhalla, and even Origins I thought was a great comeback for the franchise after being kind of a little bit dormant in a sense. Origins, honestly, is probably one of my favorite Assassin's Creed games of all time. I thought that game was incredible. Bayek as a character was outstanding, and his whole story route, and man, wow, like it was just right from the get-go right till the end of that game. That game was fantastic, to the point where I went back because you get into these Assassin's Creed games, Scott, and they take a long time, and after so many hours I just put it aside, jump back in. Dude, I finished that. I went into Unity, wrapped that one up. I started Odyssey all over again after being like 30 hours into that game. So I'm slowly trying to work my way back into the Assassin's Creed, but what I'm finding, Scott, is the Assassin's Creed of today is not Assassin's Creed of yesterday's with Ezio and all their story arcs, right? It's a lot different in the grand scheme of mechanics and how the game actually functions and stuff. So
my favorite happens to be another very overlooked one, which is Rogue. That one
Yeah.
came out kind of at the top, right at the end of the fatigue. So a lot of people just skipped it. But unfortunately, it's kind of the linchpin that connects them all without getting too into it. And that
Yeah.
was one of my favorites. But you're correct. The latest three, the new trilogy, if it were,
Yeah.
is quite a lot different than what they've done in the past. So I'm curious as to see where Infinity lies, if it tries to do a reimagining, but with the kind of leveling systems that the new games are known for. That could be interesting. But just one question for you on that one. Where do you think Infinity is going to start geographically?
Oh,
Do you think we're going to get a Japanese location
no.
finally?
I don't think so. I really don't think so. I think they should. If you watched Ghost of Tsushima or even played that game, you know how well that took off, right? That whole era and time setting that with the Mongols and all that. Dude, that game is fantastic. They've got new DLC on the way coming out in October for the game. I can't wait to have a samurai setting. Dude, it only makes sense for Assassin's Creed, but we've been wanting it since day one. It has yet to happen, and I don't think we're going to get it in with Infinity. What I do hope for, though, is because it is a games of service, we're going to get an a la Division take on Assassin's Creed where we can team up with friends, kind of like Unity in a sense, and set out to explore. And I'm curious to see how they're going to tie all that in, Scott. And what does that mean then, too, for a story setting piece? Are we going to have a big focus on story at all? Because Assassin's Creed has gone completely away from multiplayer, right? We've seen Unity come out. That was the last time I believe we had any sort of multiplayer. No competitive multiplayer since was it Black Flag? I want to say, or was there another one after that, perhaps? But
I think Black Flag was the last one, actually.
Right.
Now
So
I'm
then,
thinking about it,
that kills multiplayer competitively altogether. We get Unity later on as a co-op experience, and then you get in Origins, no multiplayer. Odyssey, no multiplayer. Valhalla, no multiplayer again. 3 of the latest Assassin's Creed games hold no multiplayer aspect whatsoever to the franchise. So I'm curious now, because they want to go to a games of service, because they've seen this constant influx of people coming into these games and sticking around, providing it's done well. Because we've seen other games come to the table and just not be able to keep the audience because there's no content there, right? So for me, I don't think we see this until 2025, because they gotta have a roadmap and a lot of that content already created. You can't drop the game and then start building the content to then keep your people, the community around. That doesn't make any sense to do that. And
it'll be lost that way.
Exactly. Look at Anthem, right? Anthem is now just dead.
That's a very good example of that.
Right?
Poor execution.
Exactly. They had an idea, and I thought they executed the story to some degree, but when they came to end game content, there was nothing there. Again, we're right into Avengers. Steve and I cover Avengers on the show all the time. Exact same thing. So they have to have a roadmap. Learn from the mistakes of the past. See what works and what doesn't work. Why did the Division 2 work? Why does the Division 2 still have an audience, Scott? Because they keep dropping more and more and more and more content.
I have an idea for Ubi. If Ubisoft wants to message me later, I'm open to consulting. But I'm thinking something along the lines of the events that Hitman would run, where you get
escalation.
Perhaps it's just an open world. It could even be massively multiplayer. I don't think that's what they're going for with Infinity, but it could. And in that space, you could have the opportunity for a lot of PvP multiplayer, some competitive stuff, but also there could be a new character that enters the area. He's only here for a week. Find him, eliminate him, and that could be a means of telling a story. You know, the one I always remember from Hitman was Gary Busey has entered the area. Find him. And I love that idea. And I think there's a lot of funny characters that you could bring in that way. Hopefully not making too much of a political statement, because that could get messy. But there's a lot of... I see a lot of opportunity in games for service in Assassin's Creed. At first, I thought it was very silly, but the more I think about it, I think I'm in.
Northern Nerdcast says, put a Sam Fisher skin in Assassin's Creed. Northern, I'm gonna ban you in a second.
Getting a timeout on the Twitch chat.
Oh man, Scott, Ubisoft had a lot more to say, so let's get into it because it's still too early to say more about Beyond Good and Evil 2. What?
Oh no!
Come on, man. So Beyond Good and Evil 2 game announced 4 years ago at E3 2017 definitively still exists, says Ubisoft, but it's still too early to say anything about it. The prequel slash sequel to the 2003 title got a rare mention in yesterday's Ubisoft Q1 earnings, just simply stating that it's just too early to talk about it. What is going on here, Scott? We haven't seen anything. Like they announced it and then, dude, they just went complete silence.
I think it's a weird case of they're overloaded with a lot of projects, I'm sure. But sure. I think in this particular instance, it's Ubisoft Toronto thinks that Ubisoft Montreal has it, but Ubisoft Montreal believes that Toronto has it. And after 3 years now, they're finally starting to put together the pieces. Wait a minute, what happened to that really interesting, high definition, really extremely imaginative video that we released 2 years ago? Oh yeah,
dude, it looks so cool. So we progressed well with Beyond Good and Evil 2, but it's too early to tell you at this stage. Oh man,
can you tell me the characters? Can you give me anything?
Nope, can't tell you anything about the game. So for me, it's still too early, Scott. I'm kind of thinking we're another 3 years away. Seriously, this put us in around the 7-year mark. Like, honestly, 3 more years probably until we see the release date
that
of
could
Beyond
be possible.
Good and Evil 2.
And considering that there's a new console generation, I'm sure that it would have, stymied development in some way. They would have had to reassess what they're doing and maybe, perhaps just use different hardware to produce 4K graphics, whatever their jump is from Xbox One to Series X, for example. But yeah. That's still, I feel like they could have produced a game last generation and have made another one in this amount of time. Whoa. So I'm a little worried that it's going to be stressed by overhype.
Yeah.
In the same way the CDPR had a situation on their hands where everybody was just so excited for it after so long.
And then
it was impossible to meet demand.
Yeah.
There was
obviously other issues,
compounding stumbles going on. Yeah, in that case, but everybody fears that. I think every developer at the moment is fearing that, and that's why in 2024 I still doubt that we'll have a release date.
I think you're probably right on that one, Scott. It's gonna be a while yet, and talk about development hell going on. This leads us into Skull and Bones has reached alpha. But it's reportedly been a long, hard road. No kidding, dude. After a reported 8 years in development. 8 years. Ubisoft Skull and Bones has reached alpha, a term generally used to denote when the game is at a playable state, even if assets aren't complete. A new report seems to lay bare how many issues it's faced in getting to that point, from the beginning in life of Assassin's Creed Black Flag expansion to only remaining in existence because of a deal with the government of Singapore, Scott. This is the only reason why we're getting anything to do with this game. Otherwise, it would have been canceled. Let's get into some more details here. In response to a lengthy report from Kotaku, and the Ubisoft spokesperson told the publication that Skull and Bones team are proud of their work they've accomplished on the project since this last update, with production just passing alpha, and are excited to share more details when the time is right. The project appears to have been in a deeply tumultuous one. However, Kotaku's anonymous developer sources say that the game began life as a planned multiplayer expansion for Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. We all knew that, right? Dude, we've been following this game forever. So before morphing into a mooted MMO spin-off called Black Flag Infinite, seems like that name and title is coming back a little bit. After that, the project was allegedly turned into a new IP, Skull and Bones, but even Skull and Bones itself appears to have taken multiple different forms since then. Kotaku's sources say that it's been prototyped in multiple settings: the Caribbean, the Indian Ocean, and fantasy world called Hyperbora. And Right? Like it's just, man, this thing seems like it's all over the place, Scott, and has seen multiple game structures, including the ship-based multiplayer shooter shown at E3 2017, the PvE experience shown in E3 2018, as well as been tested with more survival-like experiences, rogue-like elements, and live service ideas. One idea apparently included a floating base described as a cathedral on water.
Whoa,
Man,
what?
like, wow. And the game is shifted between playing as a pirate and simply controlling a boat. A final shape of the game isn't yet clear, but moving into alpha suggests it does now have a final expected form. The multiple changes has reported seen hundreds of employees working to certain goals and an estimated production cost exceeding $120 million. One Kotaku source explains that any other publisher would have canceled the game multiple times by this point, but others claim that a deal between Ubisoft and the Singapore government has forced the project to stay alive, and the lead studios, Ubisoft Singapore, required to launch original games in the coming years to return its payments, Scott. Man, what a disaster, dude.
I believe Singapore has some history in the pirate world, so that makes sense. It's not as strange as that may seem.
Sure.
But I'm trying to conceptualize what this game is going to entail. Is it going to go from the 5th century all the way to the break of the World War? Like, it's been in development for so long.
8 years, man.
I wonder, is their scope just so big and they're trying to condense it? Caribbean, Indian Ocean, maybe everything.
Oh, man. So here's another thing, too, to take note of, Scott. The last we heard officially of Skull and Bones was that it was been delayed once again in June after it had announced a new vision in 2020. Despite the protracted development in 2019, Ubisoft announced that the game would get a TV show adaptation. Oh, man. What? Okay. Dude,
I still haven't seen the Assassin's Creed movie, but I've been told not to.
Just don't.
I hope this fares better.
There's no need to see the Assassin's Creed movie. I love Assassin's Creed, and I hated that movie. That movie was awful. It just did not pan out. You could tell it just wasn't. Man, they had so much to play off of, Scott, with Assassin's Creed, and that wasn't even close for me. Skull and Bones showed a lot of promise, and what they showed in 2017 was basically they boosted the fact that you are the ship. That was the idea there. You are the ship. 2018 comes around. Now it's not just the ship, because now you're customizing the ship, and they saw you as a pirate off the ship on land, customizing a bunch of stuff, going to shops and things like that. And I was like, whoa, there, we got something. That was 2018. It is now 2021, and we've just broke alpha. Stating, let me reiterate what alpha is, Scott. The fact that it is playable, but still missing assets. Dude, we're still 3 years out. I guarantee we're 2 to 3 years away.
I would not
still.
Expect it anytime soon, that's for sure. But it makes me wonder if their new vision they found in 2020. Do you think they're scouting the board? They're looking at, oh no, Sea of Thieves is coming out with a really large expansion. We better work on our product here. They're taking notes.
Well, Sea of Thieves, I think, obviously when it launched started off really bare, but has come around full circle, Scott. But it's Skull and Bones is just in its own world right now, and it's its own identity, and it needs to figure out what it is, I think, is the biggest thing. And Scott, you know what it is? It's that time of day where we're ending the show already. Everybody, thank you for hanging out with us. This has been ITG Daily Show that brings you the hottest in gaming news. I'm Drew Bosa. You can find me on Twitter at AutisticGamer28. That's the one, the only. Scott Savage. You can find him on Twitter at Savage. Don't forget, you can always join us live over on twitch.tv/theofficialITG, but hit us up later if you want. InsideTheGame.ca podcast services and TV streaming networks around the globe. Till tomorrow, everybody. We'll see you inside the game.